As the name suggests, I'm the Director of Research and Education for Econsultancy. That basically means I find stuff out and then tell people about it, which is quite an exciting place to be. If you go on to the... this is going to be quite interesting. So to start with, I'm talking about the user journey really today. And I'd like to sort of start with talking a little bit about the Janus, the Roman god of beginnings and transitions. I thought that'd be quite a good place to start. I'm very much a firm believer that you've got to kind of know where you've been in order to kind of understand where you're going to go. And he had two faces. He looked both to the past and the future. And I think we can draw a lot of inspiration on the past to actually understand where things are actually going, especially where sort of digital is. The other kind of aspect really of the sort of two faces is that there's kind of two parts to this presentation really. I'm looking at the user journey, the customer journey really from the consumer perspective. So very much sort of digital as an experience, I guess. Gerd set me up beautifully by saying that we're no longer in control as marketers. It's very much about consumer empowerment. And then the second aspect is going to be looking at very much the marketer. I mean, what these kind of changes mean for for you guys, and the sort of role, I guess, in the sort of next sort of 12 to 18 months in coming forward. So this is the old customer journey model. I'm certain everyone's quite familiar with it. It's the kind of cycle, you go through branding and awareness, through to interest, through to evaluation, through to purchase, through to loyalty and so on. And that's very much changed. I quite like this this loop. It's an insane kind of cycle that Forrester came up with, and it's got lots of different aspects to it. So I mean, if you look at the colours along the bottom, it's the different kind of consumer touch points. So you're going through web, you're going through kind of the sort of static internet, I guess, looking at company websites, through mobile, through actual physical in-store locations, right the way through to social, call centres, all the other kind of interesting touch points that people have, and it's not a cycle anymore. It's this insane kind of loopy system that's incredibly complex, because at different areas, at different touch points along the way, people are using different channels to come through and engage with companies. And ultimately, I mean, this is quite a headache for people. I mean, consumers don't care about how they get something. They just want, they want to be able to buy something. They want a consistent kind of brand experience. They don't care about all the kind of the platforms and the tech and the data and all the stuff underlaying it that makes our job very, very difficult. But I mean, thinking very much about where they're coming from, I can kind of understand that. I mean, the evolution of the internet has gone very much from kind of an informational sense. I mean, it's very much where if you wanted to find something out, you looked online, you found it. That was kind of like Web 1.0. The whole, Web 2.0 thing was very much the sort of transactional age, the rise of e-commerce in various markets. And we're racing through here really fast. Jesus. And then the third stage, I guess, is the kind of the emotional side of it. This is kind of where we're at now. Consumers are looking for very much an emotional journey with brands and from marketing communications. There we go. And this is very much where I think for me, the consumer journey, this is where it's changed now, because it's very much an emotional aspect. And neuromarketing is not a sort of a new term by any stretch of the imagination. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically the concept of marketing through science, which is great. And I think of it very much as I said, emotion through experience. But there's this great phrase that stuck with me a few months ago, by a guy called Christophe Marin, who's written a really good book actually. And he said, "We don't remember anything if there isn't an emotion attached to that experience." And I think, from a marketer's perspective, I think that's very, very, very important. You have to, in order to sort of create emotion, you have to drive a really, really positive experience, something that people will remember, that will make them want to engage with you and buy from you and come back to you. So thinking about that in itself, Christophe actually kind of raised these kind of interesting points through this kind of emotion through experience. We're very, very self-centered. The ego makes decisions. I mean, who here's Googled themselves, ever? Am I the only one? Oh. Okay, well there we go, that's your ego right here. The ego makes decisions. It's very, very important to remember everybody now is an individual online, and you have to treat them like that. The second sort of stage really is, we crave contrast. You hear it all the time, there's marketing communications everywhere. People are bombarded with messages hundreds and thousands of times a day. How do you stand out? How do you stand out in a digital environment, which is even more inherently complex? And then the third stage, we're all naturally lazy. People don't want overcomplicated experiences with brands and along their sort of purchase path. They like it to be very, very simple. The fourth stage, we like stories. It's no surprise, everyone's sort of talking about content marketing, social media, all these kind of big buzzwords. I mean, we're inherently social. We like to share. We like to talk. Going back to the first point, we like to talk about ourselves. This is the perfect opportunity for brands to create, relatable content for consumers to latch onto. And then the fifth point, we're visual. Higher impact. That's great in an online environment with a static web form, through a mobile handset or through a computer screen. But add in the other senses. The digital technologies that are now available allow you to actually engage beyond sight and sound. It can go much beyond that. I mean, even now, just crazy technologies are coming out, like the Samsung phone. You just wave at it and it does stuff. It's very much a gesture sort of thing. So we're sort of seeing the other senses now coming into play. And then the last point, emotion trumps reason. Again, it's a good quote from Christoph there, but he said, if you give the right emotion, people will just buy buy whatever you're selling. It's a very kind of irrational, compulsive sort of thing you need to tap into. There we go. So a good example I actually picked out was of this kind of, emotion in play really is the I Quit campaign that happened in Singapore recently. Did anyone see that at all? Yeah, we've got one person at the front, great. Basically, the health board in Singapore decided that they wanted to run a campaign aimed at smokers, trying to make them quit. And what they did is they sort of utilized a combination of TV and print and radio and digital and a really cool sort of mobile app. And what happened is, the results were fantastic, far beyond what anyone expected, because they levitated. It goes back to the point of, people want to talk about themselves, and they have this ego that they play to, and for them it's an experience that they want to share, sort of giving up cigarettes or quitting, and share it with their friends and families, and they became heroes, individual heroes. And I think that's such a lovely example of a campaign really targeting people at an individual level, but without being overly complex. Go on to the next slide. I sort of mentioned TV and print a little bit there, but this is the problem. So offline has always been historically better at delivering experiences than online environments. You think about the Apple store, you go in there, it's great, everybody loves you. There's lots of other kind of examples of stores. One's the Imaginarium, which is like a toy store. They've even got this little kind of door for kids to go through. So children have their own door to go into this toy shop, which I think is fantastic. And this can be quite complex. How do you translate these kind of engaging offline experiences? The user journey, I guess, in an offline environment to an online environment. Quite easily, I think. We touched on this briefly earlier again, but I think mobile is playing a phenomenally enormous part in this. To me, it's very much the bridge between online and offline. This is a good example. This is the Neiman Marcus app in the US, and it's fantastic. You've got an app on your phone, you go into store, it knows you're there, it knows what you've been looking at, the salespeople, they know, what you've bought previously, what you're interested in, you can contact people directly. It enhances and personalizes the physical experience, but using digital technology. And that's very much the point I think I'm trying to make. A few more kind of case studies, I guess, of where this virtual and physical worlds are colliding. And again, I apologise in advance if you've seen any of these previously, but the first one, I guess, is this Home Plus Career. If you've not seen this, you must have been asleep. They kind of set up this sort of virtual store in the subway, so you took pictures of it, and you could do your online shopping. Great engagement rate, great results, but it's still quite static. So the next kind of step really that I saw was this Qantas campaign that they ran in Sydney. And they set up this virtual wall in exactly the same place, actually, in a train station. And you could take a picture of yourself, and you sent it in, and it appeared on this big interactive wall. And you could leave messages and things. And people loved it. I mean, the engagement rate, the quota they had was met for 2 weeks within 24 hours in terms of engagement, which I just found absolutely fantastic. And again, it's very much of how do you relate the physical world into a virtual one. And this is the kind of new realities, really, I think. For me, not just through mobile, but through all kinds of digital technology, what we've got is this kind of weird scenario now where we've got this augmented reality and hyper reality. And obviously augmented is fake, and hyper reality is just basically the real world on steroids. And it's very easy to see at the moment where this is actually heading. And if we go to the next slide, I think, there is actually, can you play the video on this one?
新製品は前後左右の動きに上下振り運
Cup of tea. Fill kettle with 2 hot, place 1 PG tips tea bag in a clean mug. Good. Now get the skim milk from the refrigerator.
Pretty crazy. I know I said about the kind of the overkill of pushing brands on people, but I kept a little bit where they flicked it and they just went into some magical field. The reality is that this technology exists and consumers can switch on and off to it at any time. So how do you make it a compelling experience? And I think that as marketers, you always need to be thinking ahead of the game. What are the next steps? What's the next big thing? And as I said, this technology's here. If you go to the next slide, I mean, Google Glasses, they're real. I mean, they were just a kind of figment of, the internet's imagination 12 months ago. And they're here, they're very, very real. But they've already been preceded. They've already been preceded by, contact lenses. And again, Gerd touched on this. This technology is real. And it's just being aware of it and just trying to understand about how consumers are going to react to it, but how you can then put a marketing communications message into or utilizing this technology and making it compelling at the same time. And that sort of leads me to my next point, really. The marketer, where things are with you guys. So understanding customer journeys needs a lot of structure. I put lots of diagrams in here. Everyone loves diagrams. There's kind of 3 parts for me, really. At the bottom, in the bottom sort of right, there's the customer experience itself, the actual output of any marketing communications, which is segmented to the right. But overpinning it, I guess, is this kind of analytics and data. It's understanding where people are, what they're doing, and also, where they're going to be. I think that's really, really important. There we go. And at the heart of it, for me, is technology. There's no getting away from it. When you start talking about things like, big data, deep dive predictive analytics, all this kind of stuff, technology is very much going to help you. There's no getting away from it. Marketing's technology, they've kind of gone hand in hand forever, I guess. Originally you kind of think about the product age back in the kind of the 40s and the 50s, when TV was around. It was very much just a one-dimensional broadcast sort of message. And then we kind of moved into a more sort of marketing age, really, where, the products were sort of sold through emotion, the kind of Mad Men, 60s, 70s, onwards times. You know, and at the sort of tipping age, I guess in the kind of sort of towards the end of the 20th century, you know, the PC kind of came into effect, and we started to see e-commerce, you know, sort of rising through that. This century, I guess, we've kind of entered, you know, this experience age, you know, where selling, you have to sell through an experience. You know, you have to create a very consistent and compelling establishment, you know, a really strong connection with consumers, and it's very difficult. You know, as I said, there's no kind of right or wrong answer here. But what I'm seeing is we're kind of shifting towards this utilitarian age where, you know, you've got this issue now of it's real-time interactions at any time, any place, any location, and this is proving to be the biggest headache of all, I think. But it can be countered. I mean, it can definitely be counterbalanced by technology. That's, you know, that's not an issue at all. And it's, you know, it's no surprise there's the ongoing debate, as we heard earlier, between the CIO and the CMO. They're segmenting. They're becoming the same sort of thing, really. So going back to this sort of technology as the core. So focusing very much on the analytics and data, you know, this creates the understanding. Without this, I wouldn't even bother doing any marketing anymore. If you can't understand what's going on or where people are going to be or what they're doing, just don't bother. And, you know, as I said, that leads into the marketing communications. You know, it helps you define and create the right strategy, which ultimately creates the customer experience or the customer journey, and using emotion. And to me, I think that's kind of, you know, the important sort of aspects really of utilizing technology across all three of those parts. And again, you know, thinking more about the kind of the models of how things are moving. I use this quite a lot. I actually stole it from Ogilvy. It's a couple of years old. But, you know, the 4 Ps of marketing have now actually become, you know, very much the 4 Es. You know, where product has become an experience, place has become every place or everywhere, price has become an exchange, and promotion has actually become evangelism. As I said, you know, as marketers, we've all lost control of our brands. It's in the hands of consumers now. As well as the media formats. You know, the paid, earned, and owned. Those formats, there's another 2 that have sort of popped up in the past kind of year or so. Hijacked and sold. It's very interesting. I mean, these ones are actually where I think, you know, you see brands sort of regaining control through hijacking other brands and selling their own media formats. You know, a good example of this for me is Red Bull. You know, it's an FMCG product. They don't really sell anything direct, but you know, they rely on resellers. So really, all their marketing is just branding, really. But the Red Bull Media House has just had a meteoric rise, and you know, where they're actually going out and they're filming the people they sponsor doing snowboarding and skating and all the rest of it. And apparently, you know, they're predicting that the Media House, I mean, Red Bull's Media House will actually do more in revenue for licensing and other sort of revenue streams than actually Red Bull as a product in the next 12 months, which I just find absolutely staggering. But you know, we'll see if it happens or not. So ultimately, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is in terms of how this kind of technology and the kind of the segmentation with the sort of customer journey, you know, how this directly affects marketers. From the consumer aspect, really, there's increasing accessibility and there's multiple touch points, along with a continuously growing audience. I mean, we've seen, you know, graphs and things of mobile going up and internet use going up. And there's these kind of concepts of interconnectivity, you know, everything's now connected. For marketers, I guess the issue really is, you know, dealing with that. It's positive, you know, you've got greater depth across more channels, you know, you can deliver sort of personalized, relevant communications, using sort of, you know, technology for greater automation, you know, to actually find the people at the right time at the right place. And this also allows you the ability to engage at an emotional level, which very much goes back to the point that I was sort of making. Within those processes, the interesting sort of shift that I've seen is, you know, it's going very much from kind of the traditional waterfall model of, you know, develop, you know, create, implement, learn, to a more agile focus. You know, because of these real-time interactions, you can't spend months setting up a campaign. You know, it happens in real time. It's fast, it's fluid. You know, and marketers, you know, have to react to that. You know, you have to build that into the various processes internally. And I guess in summary, really, what I'm sort of trying to dig at really is that it's really annoying not doing it yourself. The first point really is digital is entering an area where it sort of can deliver experiences and branding. It is an emotional medium at last. I mean, that goes back to the kind of experience, proposition, utilitarian kind of aspect. And it's, you know, it's an emotional medium. It's great. You can use digital now for all these kind of different interactive touch points. But it's not so much about digital as a channel. It's about the sort of bigger, wider concept. I mean, again, Gerd summed it up quite well. He set me up quite well for that one, is that it's not online and offline marketing anymore. It is, in effect, the same thing. And, you know, as marketers, you need to make, you know, kind of any interaction or any kind of experience as relevant and as enjoyable to consumers as possible. And then the third point is that, you know, digital is very much bringing new ways of working. This is focus on sort of multidisciplinary teams. You know, you need to have the technology capabilities. You need to have the creative capabilities. And it has to innovate at speed with very much a sort of this big focus on, you know, data for insight, but also the technology to make things happen. And there we go. So the kind of on a final note really is the, going back to sort of Janus, you know, this sort of Roman saying, respice, ad spice, prospice, look to the past, the present and the future. You know, I think there's a lot of learnings, you know, we can take from things that have happened, and it sort of leads us to where we are now, but at the same time, if you're not thinking about the future, I really would start doing so now. Thank you very much.